even though Captain Picard is most known for captaining the iconic Galaxy-class U.S.S Enterprise-D starship, we can't forget her successor, the Sovereign-class Enterprise-E. But where was that mighty ship in Star Trek Picard? We went through 3 seasons and did not see it at all. It's truly a shame, as to some, this is one of the best Enterprises that Star Trek has ever produced. Still, we did get a somewhat explanation as to why the ship was not around for Picard and the gang to save the day.
We can't use the Enterprise-E.
That was not my fault.
However, Geordi LaForge and Mr. Worf's explanation didn't answer what happened to the USS Enterprise-E. Therefore, we looked to the Star Trek universe and other stories to discover what actually happened. Missing in action, lost for hands, or just abandoned? Join us in this week's Star Trek Explained. Welcome to Trek Central! I'm Captain Jack, and make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a Star Trek video. Make it so. Let's get some context first, especially of where we last saw the USS Enterprise-E. Launched on stardate 49827.5, the Sovereign-class Enterprise-E would be the pinnacle of Starfleet ship design. Following the destruction and loss of the Galaxy-class Enterprise-D, Captain Jean-Luc Picard and his senior staff, except Lieutenant Commander Worf, would transfer and take command of the Enterprise-E. The Enterprise-E would defend Earth from the Borg in the Battle of Sector 001, along with resolving the Sonar's plot and the Battle of the Briar Patch. In 2379, the Enterprise and her crew, under the command of Captain Picard, would face one of the most challenging battles yet. Shinzon of Remus had staged a coup d'etat on Romulus, overthrowing the government and installing himself as the new Praetor. Summoning the Enterprise-E and crew, via Federation diplomatic offerings, he would reveal himself as a clone of Captain Picard. The Enterprise-E would engage in operations to rescue Picard and Data from Shinzon's flagship, the Scimitar. The Battle of the Bassen Rift would see the Enterprise engage with Shinzon and come out heavily damaged. With the flagship crippled, Shinzon prepared to activate the Scimitar's Phaelon radiation weapon to kill everyone aboard the Enterprise. Thankfully, Picard and the entire crew were saved thanks to the sacrifice of Lieutenant Commander Data.
Goodbye.
Data boarded and fought his way to the Scimitar to rescue Picard and beam him out, before turning his face on the Phaelon weapon, destroying the Scimitar and sacrificing himself in the process. Not only saving Captain Picard and the Enterprise, but also by extension, Earth. Following the loss of Data and the battle with Shinzon, the Enterprise-E was crippled and returned to Earth for extensive repairs. At this time, long-standing First Officer, William T. Riker, departed the ship to take command of the Lunar-class USS Titan. Following Riker's departure in 2379, Captain Picard would still command the Enterprise into the early 2380s. However, he would be promoted to Admiral in 2381, and leave the Enterprise to head up the Romulan relocation effort before the star of Romulus went supernova in 2387. The Star Trek Picard time novel, The Last Best Hope, tells us that Worf was made the captain of the Enterprise-E. There is pushback from the Admirals about placing Worf in command of a flagship of Starfleet, especially due to his reprimand during the Dominion War by prioritizing the life of Jadzia Dax over that of a Cardassian defector. Now, the IDW comic, Star Trek Picard Countdown, reveals that the Enterprise-E was still active in 2385. While Admiral Picard is conversing with Geordi LaForge, they reference that the new captain of the Enterprise is unlikely to give up the captain's chair so easily. So at least from between 2381 and 2385, we have an idea that Worf was captain of the Enterprise, but it is unclear what happens after that. We know that in 2384, the Enterprise-E was a part of a Starfleet armada mobilized to deal with the USS Protostar in the Gamma Serpentis system. However, after being affected by a living construct weapon, the Starfleet ships would begin firing at each other. How damaged the Enterprise would be in the Battle of Gamma Serpentis is unknown. If we take the comic Countdown as canon, we know the Enterprise would have survived the Battle of Gamma Serpentis. If Worf was the captain of the Enterprise-E after Picard, his time as captain was brief. He stepped down from the Enterprise-E after an incident on Krillar Prime.
That was not my fault.
This mission to Krillar Prime might have destroyed the Enterprise-E, and though Worf says it was not his fault for the E not to be active in 2401, he could still feel somewhat responsible for it, being the reason he stepped down after the incident. We do know that the final mission of the Enterprise-E was classified. We have yet to learn whether this mission was to Krillar Prime or something else entirely. With the arrival of the Odyssey-class U.S.S Enterprise-F in 2386, we can assume that after only 13 years of service, the Enterprise-E was either destroyed or decommissioned after sustaining major damage from its service. So what other information do we know about where the ship has gone? Well, as mentioned earlier, given it does not appear in Star Trek Picard, which takes place around 20 years after Star Trek Nemesis, it does beg the question if the ship is still even in service anymore. Do you like the content Trek Central produces on Star Trek Starships and the Star Trek universe? Want to hear more of myself and Lieutenant Commander Adam talking about why the USS Defiant is the best starship around? Then consider supporting the Trek Central channel and becoming a YouTube member. Hit that join button below to learn more about getting involved. Thanks everyone! Now, the fate of the Enterprise-E in the Star Trek extended canon, through books and video games, is very different from anything else we know about, and is complete compared to the current canon of Trek. It may be wise to look at its fate there to see if it could be similar in canon. Note that the following stories were made before Star Trek Picard as a series and story even came about, so keep that in mind. By 2386 in the extended canon, the Enterprise-E was still under the command of Captain Data, who had been revived previously. We know the fate of Data in canon, from dead on Nemesis, dead in Picard Season 1, and resurrected in a new body for Season 3. So even though we'll still be talking about Captain Data here, be mindful this is a different continuity. Could they bring the E back and put the new Golem Data in command of it? Might that be something we see in Star Trek Legacy? Or perhaps they could just tell us a short story of how Worf lost the ship? That could be even better. Now, the Enterprise-E would be commanded by Captain Data for many years to come, being involved in events like the Romulan supernova crisis and engagements with species 8472, also known as the Undyne. By 2408, the Enterprise-E was dispatched to Starbase 236, following a loss of contact. While ending up in fluidic space, the Enterprise would come under heavy attack from the Undyne. While the presence of Captain Data and the Enterprise-E would stop a war with them, it would be the last mission of the Enterprise-E. Even though the story, called Unexpected Honor, does not go into full detail about this encounter, it does state that the Enterprise-E was destroyed, but most of the crew survived, and this does align with the canon of Star Trek Online. The MMO of Star Trek Online has its own now canon Enterprise, the Odyssey-class Enterprise-F, which was in service by 2409 under the command of Captain Vakil Shon. Originally command was offered to Captain Data, who declined the role. The history and lore of the Enterprise-F in canon is very different from what we see in Star Trek Online. One was launched in 2386 and the other in 2409. One had at least Admiral Shelby in command for a bit of a limited time only, and the other had Captain Vakil Shon, who is still in command of the Enterprise-F in Star Trek Online. You should go play it because he is awesome. Now, other books also follow the story of the Enterprise-E. The Star Trek Destiny series of books explored the post-Star Trek Nemesis storyline, and followed Picard as he remained in command of the starship. When the Borg invaded the Alpha and Beta Quadrant in 2381, remember this is part of the Splinter-Timeline, Jean-Luc Picard took the Enterprise-E to engage the hostile force. The ship took extreme damage while engaging Borg vessels in the Azure Nebula. Thankfully, the USS Aventine arrived in time to help the Enterprise-E. Aventine arrived in time? The Enterprise would work tirelessly to combat multiple Borg vessels and played a key part in the downfall of the Borg Collective shortly after that. In 2385, Captain Jean-Luc Picard was promoted and transferred off of the Enterprise-E. The E's last mission with Jean-Luc was to the planet Kittimer, to assist in evacuating the planet's non-Klingon residents. The Enterprise-E would return to Utopia Planitia shipyards for a year-long refit, where she would also see the departure of Mr. Worf, Beverly Crusher, and Geordi LaForge. This is where Captain Data would take command and continue the adventures of the USS Enterprise, boldly going where no one has gone before. So, the extended canon of Star Trek Online seals the fate of the Enterprise-E, but could this be the same fate of the Enterprise-E in canon? Could the instance of Krillar Prime be Undyne related, unbeknownst to Starfleet? A plot point to pick up in Star Trek Legacy, if that series ever comes around. That's it for our theories and information on the fate of the USS Enterprise-E in the Star Trek universe. If you have a theory of your own, leave it below in the video comments, because if you're talking Star Trek, then we want to hear about it. If you do want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends.